Welcome one, welcome all, Mr. Duhaney.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, the first briefing will be provided by Brent McKenzie, who is our Legislative Affairs Director. And Brent will be joining us live in action from Richmond.
Okay.
All right, so Brent, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. City Manager, and good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, and members of the council. Today we'll be giving you a thorough update on our legislative agenda items, providing you an update on some budget amendments, including those from the legislative agenda, and then some that you just might be interested in. And then we'll be providing you an update on some legislation that is relevant to our legislative agenda, and some things that we just want to make sure you guys are aware of that are happening up here. Then at the end, I have about 5 or 6 pieces of legislation for to get some direction from y'all on. You guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right, so our legislative agenda has seen some mixed results here since my last briefing. Seen a lot of action this week in particular as things are kind of moving fast as we head towards crossover around February 18th. So unfortunately, our Blue Line charter amendments both failed to report out of committee, one in the House and one in the Senate. On the opposite side of that, our 10-1 charter amendments have both passed their chamber of origin, and so those were crossing over to go to the other chamber now. The Senate vote was interesting, 27-13, that was just enough votes to get it past the finish line. And there was some consternation around a bunch of charters that day, and so, but cooler heads eventually prevailed and the legislation moved forward, so we were happy to see that. The next one, our cancer screenings for public safety. Just this morning, Senator Rouse's version and the Senate have been sent, and Senate General Laws sent to Senate Finance. Like many pieces of legislation in Senate Finance, as you'll see throughout this presentation, it was not acted on favorably, but they did make specific mention that they are the funding for it is still under consideration in the budget, which is really positive news. And we're waiting for the House version to be heard in House Appropriations, hopefully this week. Our EMS 4 for Life funding, this was a request from our EMS department. Expands how we are allowed to spend the funds. It doesn't increase the funds or change the formula. It unfortunately was continued to the 2027 in the Senate, but in the House, that version was reported out as Transportation 21-0. We're optimistic that we're going to be able to turn some of those in the Senate once that version goes across. We'll see how that goes. Our fire programs fund, again, you'll remember that this legislation would increase the percentage of fee that people pay on their car insurance and home insurance. And the House, that version was not successful, but the Senate version did find some success and is continuing to move on, was sent to Senate Finance. So some good news there, showing some progress, but Senate Finance is always a tough place to be. Our SAV legislation has gone through multiple changes and has been really watered down. It doesn't provide direct action on the SAV issue, but it does ask this new commission to take a look at it. So we're hopeful that in the off season we'll be able to use this as some leverage to get them to take a new look at these SAV regulations and really start to put some teeth in some mitigation factors and some additional planning that'll help us get to permitting. We're not the only locality that's seeing this problem, and so they're hearing it from more and more folks. So again, incremental progress on that issue, but certainly moving forward. Our Menhaden fishing bill that was brought to us by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. This one's really just kind of falling apart based on the cost. They estimated the cost of the study to be around $2 million. That was a lot to ask for in these kind of constrained budget times. So, Senate version carried by Senator Dave Marsden was continued to next year. House version is still alive, but, we say around here kind of college fever, and, it's got some challenges for it. Our public event zone legislation has stirred quite a few conversations around here. It's been really interesting. We expect that to be heard on Thursday morning in the county, cities, and towns subcommittee number 2. We'll see how that goes. Could go either direction today, but we're continuing to have those discussions and trying to find some common ground. And then our 10-1 general law, just like the charter change, passed both of its chambers of origin, and will be crossing over and will be heard in the other chamber likely right after crossover. Since the last time I briefed you, all of the budget amendments, the budget amendment deadline has come and passed, and they've finally been posted. All of the requests that we had in our legislative agenda were filed. You can see them all here. Our fire department had requested $1.7 million to support their urban search and rescue task force. Delegate Askew and Senator Rouse have filed that. Our police department, Parks and Rec, requested some funding to help deal with some gun violence prevention. Delegate Askew put it in for $250,000 to support our Parks After Dark program. Senator Rouse put in $1 million to support Parks After Dark, but also some gun violence prevention program equipment. So if that's successful in the budget, then we'll have to figure out some sort of compromise there, but we've got a long ways to go on the budget. Senator DeStep put in the Virginia Aquarium's, request for additional stranding funding for the Virginia Aquarium. Delegate Askew put in the funding for the work group to review ways that the state can better support the aquarium, including the expansion that they've been working towards the last few years. And then Delegate Askew and Senator Rouse both put in funding to fill that gap that we had from some of the courthouse renovations that were made for the new judge over there. So these are just some additional budget items that our members put in. These are not things that we requested, but let's see, items that may be of interest to the council and to the city. The first one I will point out is Delegate Askew put in a $10 million budget amendment to support Atlantic Park. This is something between that the developer requested. These funds would likely flow through the city, but again, this isn't something that we requested, but that happens a lot. You remember last year we had funds that flowed through the city for the YWCA, for Samaritan House. The year before that, we had a couple of others. So it's not unusual for funds to flow through a locality for nonprofits and economic development programs and projects outside of our purview. So we'll keep an eye on this one. Delegate Askew and Delegate Knight both put in $500,000 budget amendment to support the historic Nemo United Methodist Church and some of the renovations and work that needs to be done there to support them. Delegate Fagans has put in a budget amendment to continue the work with the partnership between the YMCA and Virginia Beach Schools to provide child care assistance in Title I schools. You'll remember this was a pilot program that started last year, or at least they funded last year. Now they're looking to get the funding continued over the next biennium. Then Delegate Tata has put in a budget amendment that includes $3 million the first year, $5 million the second year to support the Virginia Military Community Infrastructure Grant Program. This is a grant program that we've utilized in the past, and we're happy to see this funding and hoping that will be included in the final budget. Continuing on this category, Senator Craig has introduced 2 budget amendments that are of interest to us. First one provides some additional funding for the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. They do a lot of great work for our region, have been underfunded for years. And then she also put in a budget amendment that would fund $2 million for the Solar Interconnection Grant Fund. This is an important grant program that would assist localities with installing solar on government-owned rooftops and helping with the connection fees to the grid. It's that connection fee to the grid that oftentimes that makes those projects cost prohibitive, and so this would be a really helpful tool. And then Senator Rouse has the same budget amendment that Delegate Fagans had on the daycare program, and then he also has $500,000 to provide to create a pilot program for our toxic exposure grant program that we have in our legislative agenda that would provide cancer screenings for our firefighters. The next couple slides are just some budget amendments from legislators from around the state that are things that we talked about in our legislative agenda or just maybe of interest. I'll just highlight a couple of these here for you. First one is Delegate McQuinn has some additional funding aid to localities for our police departments. Always grateful for that sort of support. Delegate Carr has a $2 million budget amendment to help with the that Menhaden study that we talked about earlier. Delegate Glass has a budget amendment to provide funding to the Up Center to provide mental health services for veterans. Delegate Lopez has $200 million for the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. Delegate Thomas has $10,000 to fund a study for the General Assembly to look at some of these mandatory property tax exemption programs like the Disabled Veterans program that is impacting local governments. Try to make some recommendations on how the state can support local governments better. And then the last one is really interesting and has a stark contrast with the Senate version. Our Delegate Tran, who is the patron of the collective bargaining and legislation, has put in a budget amendment for around $50 million in each year of the biennium to support the collective bargaining legislation. So over in the Senate, a lot of similar things. Different numbers were very similar. Senator Evan has put in $112 million for each year of the biennium for the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. Senator McPike has put in $3 million to fund cancer screenings for firefighters and EMS providers. And Senator Williams-Grace from Norfolk has two really important budget amendments on some flooding programming that we've been working on. The first would provide $25 million in each year of the biennium for a new Commonwealth Match Assistance Program. This would be a program that we're trying to get set up. Senator Locke has the legislation that would create a program that would provide help. The state would help provide matching funds to localities when we need matching funds with federal grants. Hold on one second, take a drink of water here. Sorry about that. All right, so the next two slides are just slides recalling legislation of interest. I'll try to point out here where it relates to our legislative agenda. Some of this stuff doesn't, but most of this does. So starting at the top with HJ 26, you'll recall Delegate Askew put in a budget amendment asking Virginia Department of Transportation and HRC to look at expanding light rail to the oceanfront. He requested that legislation be laid on the table, which means it's not going to pass. But he did take certain pieces of that legislation and had it incorporated into another piece of legislation, which we'll talk about here at the towards the end. Delegate Hope Adams and Senator Stewart have put in legislation that would impose a sales tax on nicotine vapor products. This is an idea that we've talked about for years and has been in our legislative agenda and many other localities, including VML. SB 297 and 306 is an interesting story. So Senator Pete put in legislation that would have repealed all use of speed cameras and red light cameras. We thought we had the votes lined up for that to get defeated in committee. It wound up sneaking out of committee and going to the House floor. But the cooler heads have kind of prevailed on this one, and it, a large group of stakeholders got together and so rather than removing that authority, they were able to amend it on the Senate floor to where now it requires some additional reporting and tries to reduce the authority for some of the vendors to charge any sort of additional fees. So now that those changes have been made, that legislation is going to move forward. But this discussion about red light cameras and speed cameras is, we're really just kind of at the beginning stages. There are, I don't know, a half dozen pieces of legislation that do dozens of different things on this topic. And so we're in the mix on this, and we're trying to continue to work on these pieces of legislation to make sure that they don't impact our ability to use these technologies for public safety. The next three pieces of legislation there all deal with land use. We kind of relate these to the land use provisions in our legislative agenda, where they start to reduce our ability to make our own decisions at the local government level. And then we are seeing some, these pieces of legislation are making serious progress. The first one is what they call the faith and housing legislation. This legislation basically would allow any religious organization, any church, and they've added nonprofit organizations this year into the mix to utilize their property to build affordable housing. They have to do mixed use, and I think it's 60% of the units would have to be offered for affordable housing. Both of those pieces of legislation made it out of committee. HB 804 and SB 488. The House version of this passed the House and headed to the Senate. The Senate version has been held up due to some of our concerns, local government concerns. But this legislation would require localities to increase their housing stock by 1.5% for each year over 5 years. And if you didn't meet that mark, then you have to show what they call a good faith effort. And they have this list of 10 things, and you'd have to adopt 3 of them. They're all very restrictive, like completely eliminating parking, making all your land zone commercial open for housing, lots of things like that. So there's lots of concerns here. And then the last one on this list is legislation that would require a locality to basically make by right all commercial or business zone, all properties zoned commercial or business zoned for multifamily residential. We were able to get a carve out for Oceana and our AQs on that piece of legislation. And so we were able to make it markedly better than where it started, but still some concerns with that piece of legislation. Similarly, this next one is a land use issue. We've had some success on this one, however. This one would have allowed the use of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, in any zone that's zoned for a single family. The House version was continued to 2027. The Senate bill was headed to that direction, but then they started having some discussions about making it optional for localities rather than mandatory. So they passed it by for the week to continue some discussion. So we'll continue to work on that one. HB 569 and SB 518 come from Delegate Fagans and Senator Rouse. In their original forms, these would have required all public works projects at both the state and local level to use federal Davis-Bacon rules, basically to use prevailing wage. Senator Rouse's version was heard in committee yesterday, and he did remove local governments out of that one. So we'll work with Delegate Fagans to see if we can get the same amendments made on that side. HB 1333 from Delegate Fagans. This one was not something that was in our legislative agenda, but it was something that Chief Kravitz wanted us to bring to y'all's attention. This legislation's unique. It's something I hadn't really seen before. It basically says that the legislation would require the Department of Fire Programs to encourage localities to work with their fire departments to restrict work schedules to 42 hours per work week. It doesn't require local governments to do that. It just requires the Department of Fire programs to encourage local governments to do that. So I'm not sure what real force it has, but it certainly has stoked lots of conversation, which may have been the point on this one. The next one on the list is the collective bargaining legislation. The House version has not been heard in committee yet. The Senate version had its first committee hearing yesterday. It was just a committee hearing descended from Commerce and Labor to Finance. Finance is where this decision will get made. But that happened late last night. SB 50 is a piece of legislation, again, not from our, not associated with anything on our legislative agenda, but certainly of interest to us. This legislation would require folks who are paid to lobby local governments on something that is coming up for a vote through an ordinance or resolution to register as a lobbyist, just like they have to for folks who get paid to try and lobby the state. So that's a interesting new twist on that one. SB 233 is legislation that would change aid to locality funds for fire departments. Right now, those funds are distributed based on population. Senator Head's legislation would turn it in more into a grant application process. This is something that I think relates to our legislative agenda and that it would likely lead to reduced funding for us. So we're opposing that legislation. And then the last one is another interesting piece of legislation, and we haven't taken any sort of stance on this one, and we've taken a look at it. But this legislation would allow manufactured housing in any zoning district where site-built housing is allowed, but it would have to be manufactured housing that was built within the last 5 years, and it would have to meet all of the same standards that the site-built housing would have to meet from sewer to electricity hookups to stormwater, whatever it is. It would have to meet all the same regulations. So this one, I'm not sure where the idea of this came from, but there were literally like 7 versions of this piece of legislation introduced this year, and it has been wildly popular with the legislators, and they're looking for ways to reduce housing costs. Was there one more slide, Andrew? I think we may skip the slide on accident. Oh no, you're right. I forgot. We did do 2 slides of that. All right. So apologize for that. So my last slide here, looking for some direction from y'all on a few pieces of legislation that don't fit neatly into our legislative agenda. So the first piece of legislation that we would like to support is HB 1189. This comes as the recommendation from our Department of Emergency Management, and basically provides a legal framework for early activation and coordination during imminent emergencies. So the way that TOPS described this to me was that it basically authorizes the governor to declare a state of preparedness when safety and welfare of the people of the Commonwealth require it. They think it will bridge the critical gap between routine operations and declared emergencies. So this is a really positive piece of legislation that we'd like to support. The second one here is HB 1476. This has to do with independent civilian oversight boards, and this legislation would allow them access to juvenile records when a juvenile is involved. Right now they don't have that without getting a court order, and it would allow them to go into closed session for some deliberations. All votes and would still have to be public, but it would allow them a little bit more freedom to discuss some issues. But we would like to see support for that legislation. The middle one, I'm looking for some direction on from y'all. As I mentioned earlier, Delegate Askew's HJ 26 that would have studied extending light rail to the ocean front. That piece of legislation was what we say was killed. And then he took a little piece of that legislation and he put it inside HJ 28. HJ 28 was originally and still more like 99% of it is to establish a work group to study options for providing long-term sustainable and dedicated operations and capital funding for HRT. The amendment that he made was that he asked them to look at and study all modes of transportation, and he included this long list of things for them to look at, and light rail was one little tiny piece of that. Our friends at HRT would like our support on this still. We had included in our original legislative agenda support for additional funding for transit, and so we're looking for that here as well. And then we have 3 pieces of legislation where we would like to provide some opposition from. First one is there's a House version and a Senate version of this that would require prevailing wage for public transportation services. Again, this is a Davis-Bacon sort of issue, requires lots of paperwork and regulations behind the scenes. And our public works folks are concerned that this may increase the cost for any future microtransit program that we may want to provide, and provide some additional challenges with doing that independently. So we'd like to oppose that legislation. HB 1493 is legislation that would change some of the public notice and public hearing requirements around economic development projects. This is opposition comes at the request of our economic development team. Feel as though that there's already enough public notice and public hearing requirements involved. So we would like to oppose these changes. And then the last one is a piece of legislation from Delegate Josh Cole up in Fredericksburg that would alter how our housing folks deal with homeless encampments. You guys have heard from Ruthie and her team on multiple occasions on how they deal with those issues. This legislation would severely restrict our ability to enforce cleaning up those homeless encampments. And the ordinance that was passed by the city last year that wouldn't allow sleeping in cars in our library parking lots and places like that, this legislation would supersede that and would not allow us to enforce those ordinances. So we would like to add our voice of opposition here. From what I can tell in reading it, there's no carve out for, it says you can't enforce any sort of civil or criminal penalties in public places. From what I can tell, there's no carve out for schools, for parks, for rec centers, for anything of that nature. And so I'm hopeful that there's some sort of compromise to be had on this one, but we would like to add our voice to the opposition on that. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, Patrick?
Mr. Mayor, just before council goes into discussion on any of these items, is council okay with granting Brent and our lobbyists support, authorization to support the first 2 items, and the opposition want to oppose those items? Council okay if we took that stance on those items?
Does anybody object? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, the one for direction, that one, so basically there's a bill that supports capital funding and additional support for transit, public transit in Hampton Roads. It seems like a study that's tied to expanding light rail has been added to that legislation. So it puts our folks in a quagmire, right? Because there's a referendum on light rail in Virginia Beach and what actions to take in that as well. So Brent is trying to get some guidance on, should Brent continue to support this legislation? Because it's actually in our legislative package to support more additional funding and support for transit. But with that addition of a study for light rail, does council want us to take any action on that as far as opposing or supporting it?
Okay, let's go with Stacy, and then we'll go with Amelia.
Again, we had a referendum on light rail. The referendum came back and the citizens are opposed to light rail. So I think any reexamination of the issue would be contrary to public interest. So I would say as long as light rail is involved in that study, that we should not support it.
And Amelia and Josh.
Well, I was up there yesterday as part of HRT and the Virginia Transportation Association, and we would like to support it without the light rail component. Because I even talked with HRT CEO, and he says, no, we did not ask for that. So the main thing we're doing for the study, and when Place to Place was trying to have a study similar to what went on in Northern Virginia. So we will have that opportunity that will be simple and fair. But the entire time that we walked around everywhere, we did no mention of the light rail component.
Josh?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brian. Total agreement. And as you all know, I was a supporter, advocate, and even spokesperson in favor of extending the tide from Norfolk to Virginia Beach. And that was 10 years ago, before COVID, inflation, stormwater taking up a third of our capital budget, sea level rise looming over top of us. Not to mention a federal administration that is not necessarily known to be friendly to, transit funding and initiatives. And even if the state were to give us money to explore something like that, it would be nowhere near the amount of money that it would take to complete it. So it certainly caught me by surprise when I read it in the paper, like I'm sure it did many other people. And I think before we go down that route again, if we ever do, it ought not be here before we ever have a chance to even talk about it amongst ourselves or with the public.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, let me say this about that. Excuse me. This was a controversial, topic back when. Okay, but the people have spoken just like they did on the 10-1 vote. And, from what I understand, we have alternative plans based on that for, a trail system and things of that nature. And if I recall, going back into my mental archives, the cost back then, Josh, was 1.4 billion to get it to the other front or thereabouts. You probably double that now. And, given our situation, our expectations, came out, recently, about the Army Corps and the potential discussion of the seawall and so many other things. This just really doesn't meet the priority. And, I celebrate Delegate Askew for really taking an active role in transportation. But the fact is that light rail is dated technology. It goes just east and west. It's not part of the system. Very expensive to run and maintain. So you got, once you build it, you got to maintain it and things of that nature. And one of my major objections over the years, I rely on a system that you got to drive to get to it, and it doesn't take you to where you need to go because of a limited route. So the advice and counsel that I think Amelia and Josh hit on, and Stacy, that we can go forward with it, sans the light rail.
So, Ms. Mary, is basically the direction is that Brent is okay to support funding to support transit options in Hampton Roads, with the caveat that he also expresses we oppose the light rail study inside of that bill.
I would also.
Is that helpful for you? Is that good guidance you got? Can you operate with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay.
I appreciate the additional thoughts on that one. I know it's I appreciate the additional thoughts on it. I've got what I need here.
Just one more, if you don't mind, and I'm sorry to interject again, but, and the mayor alluded to it, I mean, we've got $38 million of federal money in a trail project that is almost paid for, and one of the most difficult stretches of that trail is paid for. So anything we do or talk about alongside of any of that investment has got to be really carefully thought out, and we can't be surprised by it.
Yeah, and that's part of what I've expressed to Councilman is that, we want to make sure that and whatever they look at doesn't interfere with what we already have planned and that we're moving forward with. And I've expressed those concerns and have received some assurances that that's not the intention.
Okay, Stacy.
Just to be clear, because I could see how it could be confused, I think we should take the position that we oppose this action until the light rail consideration has been removed.
Sir?
Okay, Amelia?
Yes, what I would like to say, after I talked even with the different groups, I met with the Secretary of Transportation yesterday, talked with the HRT, and they were hands off for the light rail part. They said they did not bring it up, and they wanted it to be clear. So the entire time, we spoke only about the HJ 28 to do with the study. We did not ask for any funding at this point. So I don't know how you can divide that at all. So say we don't want the library study, that was Delegate Askew's request. He also serves with me on the HRT, but they did not request that. But we would still like to do the study because Northern Virginia did that. It provided sustainability. And, you know, something like that is important. Because one of the things we mentioned is that Hampton Roads is a major economic engine for the Commonwealth. We serve over 1.8 million residents and carry about 25,000 passengers daily. So we still want that study because it's made a difference for Northern Virginia. But we did not, how can you get that message across? We are not supporting the library component. We're only supporting the study.
Okay, Stacy.
With all due respect, again, if the question is, if the bill goes forward and says that we're going to include light rail, do we support it or not? To say that, well, we support it, but we don't like the light rail component, we may not be given that option.
Well, when did that change? Brent, can you? Because I.
It was either yesterday, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, council members, the change happened, all the days kind of blur together, so I apologize, but it was either just yesterday or the day before. I don't remember which one, to be honest with you, when it was heard in committee and they made this amendment and they killed HJ 26. And I will say again, the new language just asks them to look at a long list of mobility options, and light rail is amongst those options. And no longer says taking it to the oceanfront or studying light rail in particular, but it does mention light rail. I think from listening to the conversation, the guidance that I would take from this would be to continue to work with Delegate Askew and the legislature on some of that language. We can also check in with the folks who will actually do the study and see how they're interpreting what that means and kind of report back and go from there. I don't think that, I think we're in a much better place today than we were 2 days ago. And, you know, we can get some more information. And I think I understand what the council would like to see and that we can continue to work towards that.
Okay, Hutch.
He did what I was asking. Yeah, thank you, Brent.
Yeah. I don't want to sound like a wet blanket, but boy, I just want to dedicate staff time or anything, you know, participating in this if it, you know, if we don't want it to go anywhere. You know, and that's my focus group of one. Okay. So Brett, do you got a direction?
Believe so, yes, sir. I definitely have the direction, yes, sir.
Okay.
I do have another question.
Okay.
So unrelated to this subject, nowhere on that list did I see anything at all relative to school construction or revitalization, rehabilitation dollars. And that, I hope there's something that I'm missing, because if they're not talking.
Yes.
It's a shame.
Yes, sir. You will recall in my first briefing, I mentioned that there was legislation introduced that would give the localities the ability to hold a referendum on a 1% sales tax increase. With that 1% sales tax increase, dedicated to school funding. That legislation is still making its way through the legislative process. There's been a bit of a holdup on two issues. One, dealing with like the amount of bonding, and another issue dealing with being able to pay debt services with the new funds. And so they're still kind of working those out. But we believe that this legislation will make it to the governor's desk, and the governor said she will sign it. What that final form looked like today, I couldn't tell you, but that legislation is still very active, being debated, and will likely be very successful.
Okay, my last
And
question.
so you'll remember I mentioned that that'll likely be coming y'all's way one way or another later this year.
Last question, I promise. The Blue Line Charter Amendment, Rick, help me remember, did we pass that request unanimously?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. And so this failed along, was it party line votes, just out of curiosity?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Just let that sit for a minute.
Okay, anybody else at this point? Stacy?
Brett, could you maybe elaborate on where we are on collective bargaining and the reception to the mayor's letter?
As I mentioned, there was its first committee hearing last night in the Senate Commerce and Labor Committee. It was heard there first with the intention of sending it to Senate Finance. It was about a 6 or 7 hour long meeting last night with about 20 or 30 bills on the docket. It was a little rowdy at times, especially on this issue. The House version has not been heard yet. At the end of the day, this decision is going to get decided in the money committees, whether the state will provide the funding for it or for at the state level, or they will not. And then, I think you can, I think the letter signed by the 7 mayors of Hampton Roads, I think, surprised a lot of people, given the bipartisan nature of that letter. I'm not sure it, moved any votes yet, but it certainly caught some people by surprise and was a topic of conversation throughout the day and in the building. I certainly got stopped by a lot of people asking me about it. And as we distributed it to legislators, and we still got some more we need to distribute it to a hard copy too. But this is, I think it's early in the conversation on collective bargaining. I couldn't tell you today where it's going. I mean, I think you can, it's been so far a fully ideological debate, partisan debate. And so, I think given that nature, you can guess if the vote was held today, what would happen, but vote's not held today. And so we have a lot of work still to do on this issue. And, to be honest with you, we're going to have to kind of wait and get a better grasp on where this one's going.
And Amelia?
On a different one.
We're still on this one.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay, let me give a clarification of things, to clear up any misrepresentations. The good news is all the mayors in the 757 are getting along amazingly in a very nonpartisan way. What we are looking for collectively is helping each other become better cities to help ourselves. And we have a wonderful degree of communication. But when we started talking about this, months ago, everybody had a concern. But let me just say, I think it's remarkable when you think about it that in a time like this, in a cauldron of division that's happening in our country, where the mayors come together and say, let's forget about partisanship and let's do the right thing. And I can tell you some mayors are against collective bargaining, others are advocates for it. But we also, all 7 of us, we realize that it's on the books. And as it stands right now, localities, are the option, have an option. in the equation. And the concern all of us have is that we go ahead and mandate compliance with this. It's going to have a profound fiscal effect on all of us. We all felt that way. We take a look at Fairfax and, what they went through and, they wound up with a $300 million delta. Collective bargaining is going to cost money in staff. And if we're going to be looking at 10 plus potential bargaining units, if they include constitutional officers, we just had a retreat, where we just said we have some, fiscal challenges ahead of us. And I think what we try to do, and, Brett, I know it was last minute and things like that, but I think the intent was to really provoke a conversation that we haven't really had with our delegation yet on this. And, just convey respectfully, where we see is, where what we see from our perspective on potential negative impacts and to discuss the potential landmines and ramifications of this. So, my hope is even going forward with it, whether it be, discussions on collective bargaining or light rail or everything, I think it would behoove us better to sit down and have those meaningful discussions, with our delegations and the other folks, to come to an understanding of the needs. But once again, in these tough economic times, sometimes discussion, mutual understanding is the way to go. And that was the nature of why we decided to put that forward. Okay, Brent, so, any other, okay, Amelia had another question.
Yes, thank you, Brett. It was good seeing you yesterday briefly. I have.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, a little more clarity, the one to do with the the speed light. I think that's SB 297 to do with full
Yes, ma'am.
speed. Because again, that is something between the different cities. I'm going to hear a lot about that on Wednesday and Thursday when I'm back in Richmond, about the plus and the minus about that. Can you clarify a little bit?
Yeah, so there are probably a half dozen pieces of legislation dealing with speed cameras in one form or another this year. There's really just a stark difference in the perspective that our state legislators have versus how the local governments are viewing it. From the state government perspective, they're looking at some of these localities across the Commonwealth, and they're looking at the sums of money that they have collected through these $100 tickets. And nobody could look at that and not be struck by it. I think Suffolk is Suffolk is the one that gets brought up the most. And they have collected about $10 million in fines and fees from these cameras, which is stark. But from the local government perspective, we keep trying to get them to understand that for somebody to receive a school zone speed ticket, you have to be going 11 miles or more through the school zone during the school crossing time, which is only 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon. So we're talking about 5 hours a week, 5 hours total for 5 days a week, 5 hours, 11 miles an hour over the speed limit. This is excessive speeding where our kids are crossing the zone. From our perspective, from local government perspective, we followed all the rules, and the part that folks should be focused on is how many thousands of people are excessively speeding, not in the ticket collections. And so there have been a lot of pieces of legislation, some to just eliminate programs, some to put some pretty strict guardrails on the programs. At the end of the day, we believe all these pieces of legislation will find their way into one compromise piece of legislation that we will continue to work on and make sure that it's something that provides the right level of public safety first, and then guardrails on the program itself and make sure that it's operating correctly. So I'm optimistic that we're going to get to a good place on these. I do have colleagues who feel differently, but I'm optimistic that we'll get to a good place on these. That there is a lot of work left to be done.
Okay, and one last one is to do with the faith in housing. That situation,
ma'am.
because we've had a situation once to do with land from the house and how many acres, is the right way to go. Can you
Yes,
talk a
ma'am,
little
and,
bit about that one?
This
Faith in housing.
legislation would supersede a lot of that situation. I mean, there are a lot of details in there on administrative approvals and still needing to meet, building codes and zoning requirements of some sort. So it's not a blanket approval, but this definitely is a huge step on local government authority to make our own land use decisions. And the General Assembly believes that they have a mandate to get more housing built and to reduce housing costs. And this is the direction that they're currently going with it. We're going to continue to have these conversations with them and make sure they understand the ramifications. And our situation is a good example of how this can go. Depending on your perspective, right? But again, those pieces of legislation are on the move, despite our strict opposition from local governments.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Well, keep up the excellent work up there, my friend. You're doing good stuff. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, the next presentation will be provided by Police Chief Udigay. He's going to give City Council the annual crime update for the city. And then following his briefing, he's going to have another briefing to kind of bring council's attention some intelligence that we're seeing as it relates to some unsanctioned, unpermitted pop-up events, and seek council support for some legislative changes that we will be requesting down the road. All right, so Chief Udigay, the floor is yours.
Hey, welcome, Chief.
Mayor, members of council, Mr. Manager, thank you for a little time today to discuss the great work of your police department in 2025. And I was going to introduce the staff individually, but you can see they've turned out in force. So all of your deputy chiefs, the vast majority of your captains, your senior command staff, Chief Communications Officer Ray Pearson Ben, and probably the one that runs the police department that you don't see very often is my executive assistant, Michelle Ferranti, that keeps everything moving and keeps me on task. So we're going to start off today talking about the crime stats. And as we've covered in numerous other presentations, the major crime categories are broken down into Part 1 violent and Part 1 property. And nothing much has changed in the beach from last year. Violent crime is still a very small percentage of the crime that occurs in the city. So we're going to delve into all these categories, but I'm very excited and elated to get to the great numbers. So what you're looking at is our WAVES report, and that's where we take a look at our crime conditions over a 28, 91, and year-to-date crime categories. And there's 8 main categories. Green is obviously good. It means that we are showing reductions. If we're in the red, as we were in that 191-day period, then we're seeing increases and going in the wrong direction. But when we look at the end of year categories and the end of year numbers, Mayor, members of council, that is a lot of green. And that is green in all of your major crime categories. So just taking a quick look, homicides, we're down 6%, rapes are down 15%, robberies down 5%, all of your aggravated assaults are down 5%, total violent crime down 7%, your property crimes, commercial burglaries are down 37%, residential burglaries down 29%, motor vehicles thefts 12%, larceny from motor vehicles 12%, all your other larcenies 10%. So that is a total property crime reduction of 11%. And when you combine those two together, total Part 1 crime reductions in the city of Virginia Beach for 2025 is 11%. So, I mean, I think if I was writing a newspaper article per se, and someone wanted to, you know,
Did you hear that, Stacy?
we wanted to read tomorrow that all major crime categories in the city of Virginia Beach are showing a reduction, I think that would be a very welcome and great article for all of us. So. And this just gives us a little different perspective than when we look at that 11% total Part 1 reduction and still significantly down from the 3-year average of 8,400 Part 1 violent crimes, and we experienced 71 last year. So it's been a lot of great work by the men and women of this police department, this community, to get us there over the last few years. But let's delve down into those property crime numbers just to see how good they are and what it truly looks like. Commercial burglaries down almost 40% compared to the previous year. Residential burglaries, we know we had a reduction, but what I really want to draw everyone's attention to is where we've come since 2022. 40%, almost 40% fewer people are having their houses burglarized in the city of Virginia Beach. And, you know, a couple reasons. I think COVID, came out of COVID, a lot of people working from home definitely played a part into it, but we can't discount technology. Everyone has cheap, ready access to Ring cameras. That is making a world of difference for alerting homeowners, but also helping our detectives on the back end solve these crimes, make those necessary arrests. And I think that is one number that we should be very elated with, that you know, our residents do not have to worry about their houses getting broken into, especially while at work. Motor vehicle theft had a year-over-year reduction. But Mayor, members of council, let's look at where we were in 2022. We have a 52% reduction. And I think, like many of you, you know, violent crime, it gets the attention, it gets the headlines, but the vast majority of the complaints that we get from our community, it's the quality of life issues. It's the motor vehicle thefts, it's the theft from autos. And I think there's really two things that have played into this one. If you remember back in 2021, 22, we had the issues with the Kias and the Kia boys, and the ability for them to steal those cars very easily. I think Hyundai's implemented some technology. We no longer have that issue. But the other one, it's a hot topic, but it is showing big results, is our license plate reader technology. So if you take a look at the timeline for me, and you look back to early 22, and you can see for that 1 month period, we had almost 120 motor vehicle thefts. When we implemented our first wave of license plate reader technology, and I think this gets lost, as everybody talks about Flock, right? Well, Flock are our fixed stationary license plate readers, but the first wave was our Axon Fleet 3s. So every marked car that you see out there has a license plate reader in it. So we implemented the first wave. You can see that we started seeing decreases in our motor vehicle thefts. And that's because it has been a while, but when I was a young man and I was out on the beat looking for stolen cars, it was a sticky with license plate numbers on the dash. And we would look at the plate numbers and try to find those cars. Very hard. If we found one, you know, once a month, it was a great win. Now we let the camera do the technology. So while the officers are out there working hard, that camera is scanning all those plates. It's going to alert them to the stolen cars, the wanted individuals, the missing. And then the next wave, council, when we did implement the fixed Flock cameras, you can see that we've had another substantial reduction since then. So one, thank you. Thank you for your continued investment in the technology. It is paying dividends in the community for our citizens. All right, theft from motor vehicles, also a reduction year over year, but also since 2022, over a 52% reduction in our citizens that are going out in the morning, finding their windows broken and their cars broken into. Because this is what we really hear is, what are you guys doing about the theft from autos in our community? And a couple reasons why we think theft from motor vehicles are down. One is back in 2022, we implemented a strategy that was developed by the Institute of Crime Science, the University of Cincinnati. It did work well back there, so I was not afraid to steal it, bring it to the beach. And what this does is it puts our officers in those identified clusters where we know we're having theft from autos. It provides that high visibility, and what it does is it alerts our citizens that, hey, you left your valuables in the car, you need to do a better job, or you're doing a really good job, please continue. So the strategy puts those cops in those high-profile areas, and last year, they issued almost 6,000 vehicle report cards. And this is just the breakdown by our precincts to give you all an idea of what our activity in your various council districts look like. And I think the other thing that really plays into those numbers, and not just the theft from autos, but any of our crime clusters, whether it's violent crime, property crime, or complaints from the community, is our hotspot patrol strategy. There's empirical research and out there that shows that a 15-minute hotspot patrol strategy is empirically proven, and we ask our officers to go to these locations, spend about 10 or 15 minutes, be highly visible, highly engaging, and we will see disbursement of crime. It's proven over time, and it's definitely working in the beach. Last year, almost 20,000 hotspot patrols in those identified areas. And just a breakdown by our individual precincts of where we're asking our officers to go, spend their undedicated time to try to ensure that we decrease both property and violent crime. And while all that's going on, while they're conducting those 20,000 hotspot patrols, while they're issuing those 6,000 vehicle report cards, we can't forget about the basis of what we do, right? And that's responding to 911 calls for service. And last year, they responded to almost 210,000 citizen-generated 911 calls for service. On average, about 600 per day. And I will tell you that it's become a challenge. Staffing continues to be a struggle for us. At one point, we were back up to close to 100 vacancies. We started a recruit class a couple months ago. We're 26, Pete. So it is a struggle. We started with 31. On the third day of the academy, we lost 4, and we've lost 1 additional since then. So we're at 26. So operationally, we have 100 fewer officers on the streets right now than we're authorized for, than we would like to have. But even with that vacancy, you see the great work that the men and women of this police department are doing. Other thefts, 10% reduction. So when we look at our property crime numbers, 11.5% reduction compared to last year, down 15.5% compared to the 3-year average. And if you'd like to say it with me together, lowest in 5. So I think that would be a great headline right there. So, all right, violent crime. Those are our homicides, rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults. Just a reminder that all of our aggravated assaults are those non-fatal shootings. Could be a knife, a bat, a vehicle, anything that someone uses against another person to attempt or cause serious physical harm. And we look at rape, we're down 13%. Robberies, down slightly at 5%, but down significantly from where we were in 2022. Those aggravated assaults are also down slightly, once again, but almost a 35% reduction from where we were 3 years ago. Total shooting victims, when we look at the number of incidents where we had individuals shot, those were up by 5, but remember, those shooting incidents are just one category of our overall aggravated assaults, which we are showing a reduction. But the number of shooting incidents up slightly, but down significantly from 2023. One thing I wanted to point out is, if you remember, last April into May, we did see an uptick in the shooting incidents, came before you all in June, and we talked about what that looked like. But I really want to point out that even though we had this uptick at that time period, really need to take a look at the preceding quarter. There's 3 months where, if you look at the red for 2025, we were under the previous year and significantly under the 3-year average for those preceding 12 months before we saw that increase. And I think, like many of you, we hear it, it plays out. We hear the news from Hampton Roads, and we hear that, there's a shooting in Virginia Beach, all the time. We hear about the shootings, but when you look at the data, on average, there is one person shot in the city of Virginia Beach every 8.5 days. So it's definitely not the daily occurrence that some would like to believe it is. And, the one thing that I didn't see on the news last year is, if you look at the chart, that the first quarter of the year last year, we went 49 days without having a person shot in the city of Virginia Beach. Total shooting victims, we did have an increase in the number of victims from 39 to 50, but still down significantly from where we were in 23. And one of the reasons for the increase is we did see an increase in multi-victim shooting last year. We had one where we had 4 victims, and we had 5 with 2 victims. And these are your citywide shootings broken down. First precinct, second precinct. And the one thing that I would like to point out is Captain Wessler and his team do an outstanding job down there trying to manage the complexities of a precinct in a resort area. And we do have a clustering, but 90% of these offenses were committed week 17 or shortly thereafter. Third precinct and fourth precinct. Shooting victim demographics, 45 of our victims were adults, 5 were juveniles, and I think some great news that everyone in this room will be happy about, because we've had many conversations about this, and juvenile-involved victimization and suspects. Our juvenile victims were down 50% compared to the previous year. Our shooting victim demographics. All right, shooting suspects. 40 adults, 6 of those were juveniles. That is a 45% reduction in the number of juvenile suspects in our shooting incidents. Our demographics and homicides. So remember, tell you that data can be changing, data can be fluid. So when I reported homicides last year for 2024, we were at 13. Since then, 2 of our non-fatal shooting victims from 2024 succumbed to their injuries. so that increases our numbers. If you remember, we had a high-profile missing that was found down in Elizabeth City. It was ruled that he died of homicidal violence, and we do believe that occurred in the city of Virginia Beach. So that elevated our numbers to 16. The 15 that we had last year puts us one under. I will tell you that that 15 does include our two fallen officers. Officers Cameron Gervin and Officer Christopher Reese are part of that. And, I just ask for your continued thoughts as we move forward, as the one-year anniversary is rapidly approaching us on February the 22nd. So we are going to have a memorial, Captain Gervin in front of the 4th Precinct at 2 p.m. on the 22nd, that Sunday, to remember Chris and Cam and everything that they gave on behalf of this city. So please, if you have time and you can fit it in, we would love to see you in attendance. And in addition to that, there's many of us and the families of Chris and Cam and a contingent of your BBPD that will be making the trek to DC in May for the annual police memorial when we put them on the national wall and remember their sacrifice forever. Homicides across the city. Third Precinct, 4th Precinct. And we look at our homicide victims, 14 adults, 1 juvenile. Breakdown of our demographics. Homicide suspect demographics, 18 adults, no juveniles. Demographic slide. And homicide clearance rates. For the second year in a row, when the national average is now 59%. If you remember a couple years ago, I presented, it was 52%. There has been an increase in the positive closure across the nation, but it's still only 6 out of 10. But your Virginia Beach Police Department, and it is it takes a village, as we say. It's the community calling us, providing information. It's those zone officers that are responding and managing the scene. It's the forensics folks that are going out there processing these scenes before our detectives and Deputy Chief Wilkerson's team take that on. But they are doing a fantastic job to be able to bring positive closure and some sense of justice to every one of those families that's impacted by a loss. So I do have to, she's not here, but Sergeant Jessica Hosang was in charge of the homicide squad for the last almost 3 years, and she has done fantastic work. And as you can imagine, being on call all the time, when you do get an unfortunate offense, you're working 48, 72 hours. So she has given us everything that she had and asked to move on to something a little less taxing. She went to internal, so I don't know if it's really a better job, but one that a little more structure. But her and her squad have done a fantastic job with bringing closure and solving these. So I think definitely worthy of recognition. So when we talk about regional comparisons, I know we all know it. I really wanted to take a look because, we hear the comparisons, what's going on in the beach versus one of our other peer cities. But at the end of the day, they're not like us, right? We are a much bigger city, and that brings more complexities and more problems. So when we look at homicides per the region comparison, we're at the far end or the bottom of the scale with 15, but when we factor in per population, very similar to last year, bottom of the scale. And what I think is more that apples to apples comparison are those other cities of our size of 400 to 600,000 residents. And as you can tell, some of the other cities that we compare ourselves to have significantly more challenges. Atlanta with 98 homicides, Minneapolis 64. The one thing that usually I compare and ourselves to Mesa. Mesa is very similar to us in size and scope and have about the same violent crime rate, and we did a little better job than they did. So I will make sure that I mention that to the Mesa Police Chief. Gun recoveries, I know the Vice Mayor's not here, but I know she takes special interest in this every year. So on top of the 208,000 radio runs, the 20,000 directed patrols, the 6,000 vehicle report cards, your officers of the Virginia Beach Police Department are out there grinding every day with reduced staffing and taking almost 1,300 illegally possessed firearms off the street. And they do a fantastic job, and I just can't give them enough kudos and recognition for everything that they do under sometimes some very adverse circumstances. And technology, this council has invested heavily. It is a force multiplier for us. With reduced staffing, we have to maximize every opportunity. So one, I just wanted to really bring this to your attention to show you all and the community where your investment in this police department is going. So NIBIN, or the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, ran by the ATF. What allows us to do is take firearms that come into our possession or fired cartridge casings, put them in the system, and then it will tell us whether what we have recovered is linked to other offenses so that we can do our diligent detective work. And here is one where it's too far to read, so I'm gonna have to slide over, is this firearm was involved in a shots fired incident in Chesapeake. It was then used into a shooting into a residence in the beach, an attempted murder in the beach. It was then used in an aggravated assault in Norfolk, and then ultimately recovered in some type of weapon law violation in Portsmouth. So if you look at the map, same firearm, used in 5 different offenses, 4 different cities. It's important to know because like we say, our criminals go into other jurisdictions, they come into the beach, and this is a regional initiative. So we have to know what's occurring. And these are our folks that are now entering our information into our own NIBIN machine. It's something that we have been working on for the last couple years that really delayed the process for us, is we did not have our own facility to, on the far end, to shoot. So 5 years ago, when we needed to send that out, we were sending it to the lab in Norfolk. 6 to 9 month turnaround. So obviously, by the time they linked all these crimes together, there's nothing we could do with that intelligence. With council's blessing, in 2022, we bought our own machine, didn't have to rely on the lab in Norfolk. That cut that time down to about 35 days, and we started entering our own shell casings into what we call the brass tracks. The problem we had is we had to take those recovered guns down to Moyock, sometimes once a week, every 10 days, to test fire them, then bring them back. So on average, we took that down from 6 to 9 months to about 35 days. While we were building out our own test fire room out on Leroy Drive, we partnered with Freedom Shooting out on the boulevard, who allowed us to come in 2 or 3 times a week before they opened to do our own test fires. So we owe them a debt of gratitude and thanks for being those good community partners. But very recently, we have come to fruition that we have our own test fire room. And as you can see, we have went from 35 days to 48 hours on the vast majority of them to get those returns back. And those high-profile ones, those homicides, it is not uncommon now to see those in a matter of hours. So thank you. Thank you for helping us advance the technology that we need to keep the city safe. And there's the construction. and then the new test fire room on the right. So, violent crime. We're at that magic slide. If you want to say it with me, lowest in 5 years. So 7% reduction last year. That was on top of 20% the year before. So we're looking at about a 27% reduction in violent crime in the last 2 years, and down significantly where we were in 2022. And I think if I was writing an article in the paper, that would be a great headline to carry. Violent crime, lowest in 5 years. So, and traffic crashes, down 18%, but I would caution it is hard to feel too good about the numbers because last year the state changed the reporting requirement. It used to be $1,500 worth of property damage for a reportable vehicle crash. They changed that to $3,000. So there's no doubt that that plays into that reduction. So we're going to have to wait for a couple of years of data to see where that plays in. But at least on paper right now, we do have a reduction. Fatal traffic crash incidents, we are up by 7 compared to the year before, but down from 2023. And one of the things that I kind of want to talk about, it's an opportunity to educate the community, is some of the known fatal traffic crash factors. Of course, we think drugs and alcohol, we think speed. We always talk about the pedestrian-related crashes, and we had 7 of them involving fatalities last year. But 6 out of 7 of those, the pedestrians had a causative factor in those. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to bring that forth, continue to make that plea to our community that if you're jaywalking across the don't walk sign, you're going across 4 lanes of moving vehicles. What we continue to see are individuals wearing dark clothing, walking in the roadways late at night. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue to have adverse circumstances when that happens. And it is very challenging for your police department to try to address this because we do not have an enforcement piece. If we remember back in either 20 or 21, General Assembly took away our ability to enforce jaywalking violations. So it's very challenging for us to address it from an enforcement perspective. So we really have to rely on the educational piece. Now, I found this interesting. I think most in the room would have thought that those involved in our fatalities would be our younger individuals, probably, that 19 to 29 range that would be a little more reckless, a little less attentive. But actually, when you look at the numbers, those individuals 50 plus are the vast majority of our fatalities and our crashes. So traffic stops by year. We continue to hear from the community how important traffic safety is. So I will just add that on top of those 208,000 calls for service, those 20,000 directed patrols, the 6,000 vehicle report cards, the almost 1,300 guns seized, your officers are out there every day trying to make the roadway safer by engaging in proactive directed traffic enforcement. Of those 29 incidents, 31 fatalities. So we are at, when you look at just the non-apples to apples comparison, we're at the very left of the scale, but when we factor in population, we go back down to the bottom. National comparison, Long Beach 55, Colorado Springs 53, Miami 51, Virginia Beach 31. Definitely room for improvement. Definitely a concern for your police department is traffic safety, and we will continue to address it. I was asked to give a quick update on our human trafficking efforts. Human trafficking is not like most calls. We don't receive 911 calls for human trafficking. Most of our notifications come in through either Crime Solvers or the National Human Trafficking Hotline. But really where we develop our actionable intelligence is when we do make an arrest, and the great job of our special investigations detectives interviewing those individuals so that we can delve further into what that looks like. So last year, one of the things the Vice Squad focused on were complaints about the illegal massage parlors across the city. We did do several sting operations, made several arrests. Believe we identified several victims that we believe came down to the industry from the state of New York, and we got them the services that they needed. 6 search warrants executed, 49 arrested for their involvement, and $132,000 seized out of those locations. Real quick on technology. What you can expect to see as we move forward. Very excited that we are getting close to implementing our first installment, I hope, of the Drones as First Responder program. We use drones now, but they're mostly, officers have them in their car, they respond out to a SWAT incident or a missing, and they deploy them from that vehicle. But this council was very gracious to give us money, and our very first installment, we are in the process of installing what they call hives down at the oceanfront. Each hive will encase 2 drones. When we get a call for service down there, whether it's a shots fired, a fight run, maybe a missing person or a drowning, those drives will independently launch, start responding to the location. They will be controlled by our real-time crime center, who will monitor the situation and start relaying that actionable surveillance information to our officers before they can even get to the location. And remember, down at the oceanfront, many of those officers, they're on foot, they're on trike, they're on bicycle, or they're in a vehicle, and we know Atlantic or Pacific's landlocked. It takes us a while to get there. The drones can be there in seconds and start providing information. So one of those hives is going to be down near the Rudy Loop. There'll be another hive somewhere between 17th and 21st, another one at the north end. And so we will have complete coverage of our resort area. I think something that is very neat that they have told me should be an option within months in the near future is not only will those drones be able to independently launch, we get them on scene, but if we have a drowning victim, they're telling us that at some point in the near future, those drones can be equipped with personal flotation devices. So if we have someone out in the water, before someone can get out there, we can maneuver a drone over top of them, drop them a PFR, keep them afloat while our Marine Patrol or lifeguards or whoever is out there performs that rescue. And I think that is everything I have in regards to crime and technology before we get into what the future looks like as we move into spring. Are there any questions on that one? On
Any
crime
questions for
stats
the
or?
chief right now? Okay, let's go. Stacy Michael.
Not necessarily a
Yeah.
question, that's incredible.
Yes, sir.
What, as far as technology goes, where's our next step?
I think right now, we are waiting to see if the DFR program is as successful as we envision it. And if it is, then I would imagine that we're going to want to consider what it would look like into expansions in some of our other locations.
And do you see the need for a 5th precinct in the near future?
For the oceanfront, absolutely. I think that has always been a vision that I've had since I've been here, is that we have a very vibrant oceanfront, 14 million visitors. We have a great economic development department that continues to bring and attract new events. The one thing that hasn't changed is our staffing. We're trying to staff and provide safety and security for all the new visitors, all the new events, with the same limited number of personnel. The challenge is we're a big city, 460,000 residents. We're not just the oceanfront though. And many times we are robbing Peter to pay Paul with pulling resources from those other areas during the summer. So yes, I do see a critical need, if we could ever get there, to stand up a 5th precinct that would be resort area based, and that we would upstaff it so that we were not forced to pull from the outlying precincts year round.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Michael Uncash.
Thank you, Chief, and really fantastic report and numbers. I know we're all happy to see that. I have a question because in addition to the incredible men and women at the Virginia Beach Police Department who contributed to the success of the numbers here, we have public safety partnerships such as with the Sheriff's Office, Emergency Communications, Fire, EMS. And I'm just wondering if you could share any more about how the police department works with those other agencies to achieve the results that we saw here today. Just to,
Yeah.
you know.
Councilman, thank you for bringing it up, because none of this happens in a vacuum, and we do rely on our public safety partners. Without Jane and her team answering those phones, we don't respond to any of these locations. The partnership that we have with the sheriff and our other entities, that when we are short-staffed, especially some of these events, we're already in discussions like years past. They're going to augment our staffing down at the resort area. And without Sheriff Holcomb and his team, we would really struggle, because 100 operational vacancies is quite a bit for this police department. And to continue to be able to bring these types of results and these numbers, we are wearing our folks out. And a lot of this is done on overtime, but we know that's not sustainable.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Cash.
Chief, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your leadership. I'm grateful for your team out here who interacts with the community. And so your leadership team is one that is pro-community. And so that speaks volumes to me. And having the council that we have, we are very pro-police, which means if we need to look for ways that we can help with, and I'm going to say it, having 100 less sworn officers is something that we should take to heart as a council, right? Right? We've got the right council, so I'm looking forward to this council maybe having a nice discussion where we can aid or we can look for opportunities in the budget, because the PISC board members have found ways where we can save some money. And that was their task. They were tasked with that job to find money, right? And so if the PISC board was able to find some money, then I think we can look to relocate some of that money to the police department and help with the deficiency. So, Chief, I'm committed to doing that for you. I can't speak for my colleagues, but I know that they are pro-police.
Councilmember, thank you. And I think it's important to mention that, we're not just sitting back waiting for people to come to us. That within the last year that, we have partnered with a local advertising firm, produced, hopefully you've all seen them, some very professional recruiting videos that I think highlight everything that this department and this great city has to offer. In addition to the social media advertising, the manager and the budget team were able to find additional funds, and we have bought some advertising on our local airwaves. The last couple playoff games, we had advertising prime time. We are doing everything that we can to try to entice individuals to this police department, but we are still, there's still a finite number of individuals wanting to engage in this profession, and I think we're all trying to entice the same group. So it's a struggle, but we're not sitting on our laurels waiting for them to come to us. We are actively working.
A Worth and Hutch.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer and Chief Newdigate and all the men and women serving in our police department. Thank you so much. Congratulations. I don't know where to start on all the different facts and figures that you told us about. I was amazed at all the gun recoveries. I mean, that's a lot of guns. And your statistic on it every day or every week, how many that is, but that's amazing. That saves a lot of crime from our streets. Just a quick question about the traffic stops, and then also want to make the observation is that, you are known very well with us with technology, and I'm glad we have approved of your request because it really is showing today and last year and in the future, but also it takes your department to implement that technology. Just want to make that comment. It's you don't just push a button, you have to operate it. So I think I really thank you for that. You really have done extremely well on that. But back to the traffic stops, 35,000, does that include like speeding, running a red light? That's a lot of stops.
Yes, sir. It would be both moving and equipment violations. So speeding, reckless operation, red light violations, down to expired license plates. That's all inclusive.
And just one more question. The mounted patrol, what's your comments? How valuable is that? I think from being at the ocean front, seeing men and women on horses on the mounted patrol it's very visible, and I think it says a lot, and I'm sure it's used elsewhere in the city. How valuable is the mounted patrol?
Council member, they're indispensable. And I think as a resort city our size and the complexities that we have, they do an incredible job of helping us to maintain visibility and control. And this is beyond their community engagement portion. I mean, they are probably the most requested officer that we have, more so than us. Folks want to see the horses, but I will tell you that they are worth their proverbial weight at the ocean front when we have large crowds, because the horse with their size is able to encourage large groups to move without us having to go into the crowd, put hands on. What I would tell you is my expectation is if we lost our mounted patrol and our ability to use them down there, expect to see an increase in officer assaults, uses of force, use of chemical irritant, because that's going to be the result.
Okay, Hutch?
So I wasn't going to start with this, but as have been a young man down there, growing up down there at Chicho's and all of it, and had a great time. One of the things that I always had the most respect for was the horses, down there. Plus the folks. Don't mean anything slighting you guys. But let's face it, horses and dogs, So, and seeing them, just exactly what you're talking about, when 1,200 pounds is, walking through, it moves people. But I was also going to say on a very positive is been fortunate to go to Buckingham Palace and seeing the pictures taken with the horses. I'd be willing to bet that over the summer months that our horses and officers are probably had the picture taken, and the pets of the horses and everything else. I would bet it's equivalent to what is worldwide known. You know what I mean? We don't get that notoriety for that, but it's happening every time you go down there. You'll see somebody standing beside them, somebody taking a selfie. It is a true, I think, force multiplier on a lot of different fronts. So it's just, I really wasn't even going to say anything about it, but I think it's important to note. On a more of a sadder note, when we look at the stats here, because that really just came to me when you were going over it, when we look at the rapes and the violent crimes and the stuff like that, would you say, is it a misnomer that, like you hear people, and everybody hears me talk about the diner, right? And they were like, well, somebody was murdered. About the rapes for so much, but they talk about that, and they make it seem like it's random. You know what I mean? In their minds, or like the break-ins. It's a really low number of break-ins.
Yes.
For the number of houses that are locked and doors and everything else. So my real question is to dig into this as it's an insidious thing, but like with the rape, is that family members? Is that separated? You know what I mean? Is that when you get to that, and the same thing with homicides, do we ever break that down that way?
We do. We look at every one of them. Deputy Chief Wilkerson's team does a great job of really trying to dig into the why.
Yeah.
We will tell you that if we have a domestic related homicide, have we been there before? Have we made arrest? Was there a way for us to possibly predict or intervene? did we miss something? For our sexual assault offenses, the vast majority, individuals know each other.
I was afraid.
Yes.
Not afraid of, but it's more like, so we are asked, we get talked about with it, and they want to talk about these things, is that it's such a weird way to say, I'm trying to be careful here, is that, you don't want it to happen at all, right? That's our goal, and I appreciate y'all's effort. But some people, I think, have an unwielding thing of what is going to happen to them in this city. And it's like, that's just not accurate. Your numbers are proving that. And when you get to these ones that are violent crimes from your own sphere of people, it really does shrink down and makes it even so that we should feel more safe, I guess is what I'm actually trying to get to.
Yes, sir. Let me.
Yeah, undig that for me. I'd appreciate it.
You're exactly correct. Unfortunately, with our sexual assault offenses, many of them, there is some type of relationship. Unfortunately, in a lot of them, there's a familial relationship where there's a family member that is engaging in conduct with, many times a younger family member.
Right.
And I don't want to, like you, downplay any of these because we investigate them all with urgency. But I will tell you that when we do have one that comes in where we have a victim and then the suspect, and there is no known relationship, they don't know each other at all, I mean, it heightens it. I mean, that is definitely a red flag, and those are very few and far between.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to double check what you said. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Patrick.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to let the council know there's another part of this presentation that I'd like to get to because we need some guidance on council on that one.
Okay, let's go ahead and
Yes, sir.
get to
So,
that.
Mr. Mayor, so Chief's about to kick this off, but as you all know, when the weather changes, we get a lot of crowds, right? And sometimes we get unpermitted, unsanctioned events. And last year we had several incidents that led to a lot of community concerns, media coverage, and also some business stakeholder concerns. And we presented to you all some options. One of those options that we're currently working on is with the General Assembly. And that would ideally give us additional policies, additional tools to police unsanctioned permitted events. The police chief is seeing, and the police department is seeing some intelligence to indicate that we're seeing some of those events likely to come this year. We want to seek council's guidance as it relates to possibly working to lower the minor curfew, right? The chief's going to give a little bit more explanation. We're going to talk about some of the exemptions, and at the end of this presentation, we'd like to see if it'll be okay for us to bring forward legislation to affect the minor curfew to make it lower from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. So go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So very similar. This is just to refresh us from the conversation that we had last year. And if we remember, this has been a recurring issue for us when we get into the warm weather months. This was March 7th of 2022. A single social media post attracted hundreds of young kids to the ocean front. They were scattered, and if you see what happened on the boardwalk, someone threw a series of fireworks. Many thought it was gunshots, and as a result, we had a mass exodus. And I think we're very, very lucky that there were no serious injuries for this occurrence. More recently, April 5th of last year, we had a pop-up event. A number of young adults showed up at the oceanfront, and we know that the DQ lot and 17th Street seems to be the epicenter. On-duty resources went down there to monitor the crowd. While they were there, to the left of the screen in 17th Street Park, individual produced a firearm, began firing at other individuals. And like I mentioned, this just isn't a police problem. Your police department is down there with as many available bodies as we can. For this particular incident, several, feet away, you had 11 visible, marked Virginia Beach police officers. An individual pulled out a firearm and began randomly firing at will without a care. Same year, May of last year, you have a VBPD officer in full uniform on a visibly marked bike. The individual that you see right there, evidently we believe he took offense to the car that did not yield to him in the crosswalk. So his response was to pull his firearm, even though that there's an officer right there. The officer ended up chasing him down. While he was chasing him, the individual with the firearm actually discharged it. We're very lucky that it discharged into the ground and nobody was hurt. And I would offer that this individual is very lucky that our officer did not get to the point that he had to use deadly force to protect himself or someone else. We know that from April 25th to April 27th last year, we arrested 50-plus individuals. We seized 28 firearms. We had 3 individuals shot. And just going back to the 2nd Precinct shooting slide from earlier, the vast majority of those shooting incidents occur during our spring activities. Once we get into usually end of May or June, we have very few incidents of violence at the oceanfront. So this is really where we need to get our handle on what is occurring during the warm weather months for that week 17 and early spring. So one of the things that we did try last year is when the postings for these unpermitted or pop-up events were occurring, we tried to use social media to our advantage to kind of deter them from coming, that they were not sanctioned, they were not permitted. Try to use social media to our advantage. When we can identify the promoters, we do put them on notice with a letter telling them that it is not permitted, that there are potential sanctions for those, but it's hard to identify these folks that are posting on social media to determine who is going to actually host these. But already, even this year, these are the current social media posts encouraging a college beach week that is outside the normal week 17. This is being advertised for April 9th through the 12th. April 9th through 12th, beach shutdown. And so that is the first one that has come to our attention that we have concerns about, because the struggle that we have is whether this materializes or not, we have to posture up for it. Because if we don't, and we have 4,000 or 5,000 individuals show up and we're not prepared to handle that, then we're going to have some significant issues at the oceanfront. And if they don't show up, we're paying overtime, we're canceling off days, and we're wearing our folks out. So it is a very delicate position for us to be in, that we, if something occurs and your police department is not down there prepared to handle it, you're all going to have, and rightfully so, questions for me. One of the new tools that we do have in our toolbox for the year that we are going to use, we thank Mr. Stiles and his team for getting us the right verbiage and the approval for our trespassing enforcement authorization form. And what this will do is it basically allows us to enforce trespassing violations on private property. So those locations where we've historically had problems, we can go to the manager or the owner. They will give us permission. And if we're having problems at a location and we have already warned someone to stay off the property on their behalf and they're back, we can issue a summons or make an arrest, and we don't have to have that property manager with us. And I know Captain Wessler and his team are already down there looking at some of those challenging locations at the oceanfront. But this isn't just for the resort area. It's a tool in our toolbox that we can use citywide. Curfew for minors, something that we have used sparingly, but I think we are taking a hard look at what this looks like as a tool to help mitigate those crowds. Anyone under 18 cannot be out in the public view between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. currently. I think this is an opportunity as well for us to remind the parents that they can also be cited and held criminally liable for allowing their children to be unsupervised in the public during those hours. And I mentioned it before, and what we're seeing is we see, parents, groups, custodians drop off a carload of young kids down at the oceanfront and allow them to stay out during the late hours and we, de facto become their babysitters. And I think what we would like to do is send the message that we can no longer tolerate that because, one, it creates a challenge for us, and two, we're worried about their safety. If we have these large crowds and incidents of gunfire and gun violence, we don't want them becoming a victim. There are exemptions for those minors that obviously we will adhere to. So as we move forward, one of the things that we have not done in years past is have a dedicated method for that curfew enforcement. So we're partnering up with the sheriff, Parks and Recreation, and as the weather starts to break, we're going to concentrate our enforcement efforts Friday and Saturday nights, at least right now, from 11 to 3 a.m., unless we do get the okay to reduce that to 10, where the VBPD officers will identify and primarily focus on those young children, those 12, 13, 14 that are out. They're obviously underage. The sheriff's office will take them to a rec center or somewhere less confrontational than the police department. So we wanted to try to not make it as a contentious of a encounter as possible, and gives us ability for a warm handoff to the parents or guardians. And we're still working with Parks and Recs for some additional programming or something that while those juveniles are in our custody, we're waiting for the parents that we can establish some type of positive relationship moving forward. A tool in our tool belt that we have not used that we are definitely looking for implementation, if it comes to it, is it allows the chief, with permission of the mayor and the city manager, to empower a curfew for all persons if there's an imminent threat of any civil commotion or disturbance. So if we would need to use that tool, we can enforce that for 24 hours. It gives us the ability to put a general curfew for everyone to regain control of a location or a scene. And if we need to authorize that for more than one day, then we would have to come back to this body and ask your approval to sanction it to allow us to continue. And additional optional responses for these weekend pop-up events is the early closure of the city parking lots. Like many other cities that we talked about, the dynamic pricing to increase the hourly rate in the city parking lots. The pop-up legislation is under consideration, but even if passed in its current form, which looking at it would be very beneficial to us, it would not be in effect until at least July 1st. And then our request, to echo what the manager said, is I do believe we have the ability to reduce the start of our curfew to 10 p.m. And I think that would be a tool that would be beneficial to us. Many times we see these large crowds, they form at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The fighting, the assaults start. If we know that this is what it's going to look like as we start to get into those later hours, then we can start that advance notice that there will be curfew enforcement. We can use our PAO and our city comms to get that out and hopefully use that as a deterrent to get some of those young folks to leave. But then if we need to use it as a tool, we can start to help extricate some of those young individuals from that situation.
Patrick.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I asked me would ask that would council be okay with us bringing forward an ordinance to lower the unaccompanied minor curfew from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. Ideally, we would want it to be lower, but you're not afforded that ability under Dillon rules, right? So as part of the pop-up legislation, we're asking for the ability to be able to lower the minor curfew, unaccompanied minor curfew, lower than that. But all we can go is that's 10 o'clock right now. And if you look at the information of cities that have struggled with this, they were able to become successful when they've been able to kind of create a separate bifurcated minor curfew. For example, DC, with the issues they were having at the wharf last year, when they were able to kind of hit a curfew for folks that are under 18 and unaccompanied, they were able to kind of turn that around as well. And some of the cities like Myrtle Beach, they were able to do that last year as well, to kind of turn a corner after they started out with a really bad year with some violence that associated with these unpermitted pop-up events. So Mayor, if there's no issue, we would like to bring that forward, and if council wants to discuss it, we're more than happy to take any questions and answers.
Okay, any questions for Patrick? Yeah, Stacy?
I'm always 100% in support of our law enforcement. My question is, have we run this by the RAC stakeholders down at the oceanfront for their input?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I mentioned that, or we can, sir, but I'd say the exceptions on this allows for a lot of grace, right? So for example, if a kiddo is working, if they're running an errand, or if they're doing an emergency, if they're participating in a First Amendment protest, they're allowed, or if they got a family emergency or running an errand or a religious activity, there's a lot of space for them to still be out on the streets, right? So for example, if we got somebody that's working in a 16, 17-year-old working in one of our restaurants or being a lifeguard or something like that, they would be permitted to be doing those activities or leaving or going back and forth to those activities. So I think it will benefit them as well, but if the council wants, we could take this to the RAC to discuss it, but I think there's a lot of carve-outs for those that are working and engaged in activities appropriate down at the oceanfront.
Yeah, Stacy, I think it would be appropriate to communicate with them, but ultimately the decision has to be with us. Because what we're looking at is, grants, we it's a public safety thing. And, sometimes other groups, they may have diverse opinions on everything. I think we have to be guided by doing what's right. And Michael, if I can bring up a number of years ago, when Lynn Haven Mall was having all kinds of problems. And then we put, certain restrictions in there, and we got it taken care of. Yeah.
I'm not asking for permission, I was just saying.
Okay, it's always good to inform. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I forgot to mention, and Matt will come up and speak, but you remember last year, after we had the presentation, council did give us direction, and this is my fault, I forgot it, to go talk to our stakeholders. And we did that last year as well, and Amanda's going to report how that went.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As the manager mentioned, last summer, as a result of some of the conversations and experiences that we had last April, Deputy Chief Zelms and Captain Wessler and I did meet with the various associations, the RAC, the Hotel Association, the Restaurant Association, and the Atlantic Avenue Association to discuss all of these tactics. At that meeting, we did very specifically discuss the ability to lower the juvenile curfew from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. and a result of the carve-outs that the manager described, especially the ability to travel to work or be with another adult or guardian for a school event. There was broad support across the associations to implement this tool.
And Stacy, I'm glad you really brought that up because I think that type of community engagement, is necessary. But the other thing, if I could also point out, with the meetings that the 757 mayors have had, we actually asked for their help and guidance, because with best practices and everything. And they actually helped us get patrons for the pop-up thing. But once again, it's not only working with our internal communities, but the external communities, because a lot of those folks, come here too. And, when we're very cognizant about that we're not targeting anybody, one specific group or anything, but, we want to get things under control. And Michael, I think Lynn Haven Mall was a really good example. Stacy was problematic there for a long time. And then we put some, dare I say, restrictions on them. I think it worked beautifully. Yeah, Michael.
Question for the chief, and also for Ms. Jarrett, if you're interested, about the type of advertisements that we're seeing, because if my recollection is accurate, for the first time, probably last year, we saw these kind of graphics that look like they're AI-generated graphics with no specific information. It's like party on Friday, party on Saturday, pool party on Sunday. It doesn't tell you where, doesn't tell you how to buy tickets, doesn't tell you any specific information. And other than what appears to me to be an AI-style graphic portraying the beach or whatever, there's nothing specific to it about Virginia Beach. So I guess my question is, just for my own awareness, and I think the community would have an interest in it after seeing this, is this unique to Virginia Beach, or other communities seeing the same type of, again, what looks to me to be, is it AI generated, and are they bots? I mean, is a real person posting this type of stuff? What is this? And
So-
is it in other communities that are similarly positioned?
Interestingly enough, last week, again, Deputy Chief Zelms and Captain Wessler and I traveled to a gathering of resort city police departments to discuss their challenges related to these pop-up events, and we are not alone. This is a trend across all resort cities. We're seeing that these event promoters range in their backgrounds. Some that we have found have been like 16-year-old children that are operating from their room, and their parents have no knowledge of what they are doing. And so during this event, we discussed a variety of tactics that would be helpful for us to pursue moving forward to try to stop these. But as the chief described earlier, when we become aware of it, until we can fully vet it, we have to prepare.
They don't seem like very good party promoters to me.
They are very,
Know where to go, right?
You gotta know where to show up.
Hey, get married next week, we'll let you know.
council member, they are very secretive. They will post that and then not distribute the actual locations of the event till 24 hours before, which makes it very challenging for us. And, you know, we don't want to go too far into what we do to try to stay on top of it, but makes it challenging to get that real-time information. But we know from talking to a few of them last year, even if they're looking to hold an event in Norfolk, Chesapeake, they use Virginia Beach because that's the attraction.
But I guess what I'm asking is, are they real, or is there some element of scammers out there selling tickets to fake events, or you know, generating engagement to promote something else? I mean, we live in a really evolving and rapidly advancing digital world, and I guess what I'm asking is, are people really doing promotion this way?
Yes,
Or
yes, and yes.
Scamming people.
Yes, and yes, it's both. Some of these are legit, that they're trying to entice people to come and congregate and have this big event. Some are advertising. You pay money for a ticket, and it's not legit. So it is both, which complicates it for us because we don't know if it's a legit one or not, and we're forced to commit resources and do the intelligence work to try to figure out, are we going to have an event and an issue, or is it fabricated? Or are they actually going to somewhere else in one of our neighboring cities, and they're just using the beach because that's the attraction?
Thank you. Very, very complex.
You know, it makes me think about Parks After Dark, right? And I know someone asked me to do this, and then I thought about it, and I said, this is one of the reasons why maybe you could tell me, Chief, could this be Parks After Dark? Could this be one of the reasons why the numbers for juvenile shootings was down, is because of that initiative that we have during the summer months?
We would love to hope so, and, you know, assume that that definitely plays a role, that we are seeing an increase now that we have invested heavily, and that, you know, I think it plays a part.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else at this point? Chief, I just want to thank you for a magnificent, you know, presentation. You know, playing along with what Hutch said, you know, I think some ways the problem is our success. That we, you know, when we do have a crime, you know, it does make the news, where unfortunately so many cities, it's kind of, turn on the news, it's routine. But, you know, but I'm just saying that, and then along the line what Cash was saying before, you know, you have vacancies, but I'll tell you what, it's a national problem that we have with vacancies. And I think a lot of cities, I think you might have 80 to 100. And what's your full complement, about 850?
797, sir.
797, okay.
It should be at least 850 or higher. I will throw that plug in, yes.
That's the
So
number.
you and I are tracking, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yeah. But I'm just
Softball,
saying.
thank you. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The Grand Slam.
I learned from the fire department, Hutch, or council member.
Okay, I swear we didn't have that work.
Yeah, don't hate the player, hate the game, right?
No, but I'm just saying that we, and you know, what we have done, when you requested a salary survey last thing, we came through and, you know, we gave you, you know, the money that you need to recruit and retain. It's not, but once again, we have a national crisis that we're police officers, it's a tough profession now. People going in, you know, into it and everything. But the thing is, I think we have the reputation of having such a stellar, well-run police department that anybody that would want to go into law enforcement. I've been, over my years, I've been to a number of ceremonies in the basement of the old building where we swore in officers coming from other cities around the country. But especially now with the modern police and everything, yeah, you have the challenges, but I'll tell you what, God bless you and your crew, and I really appreciate you're doing the job. You know, even though you're shorthanded, God bless you for what you're doing. You make Virginia Beach strong. Thank you. And for the, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Mayor, next steps for us is that we'll work with the city attorney's office to bring forward legislation to lower the unaccompanied minor curfew, and we'll shoot for it a February 17th meeting. But Chief, I wanted you to mention, and I think this number is right, the Chief and I were talking probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago about the current recruit class, and the Chief mentioned to me, remember the cadet program that council authorized probably 3 or 4 years ago? And inside this cadet program, inside this recruit class, I think there were 6 of the, the 6?
Yes, sir. 6 of the current patrol aid program matriculated into this current recruit class, and I will tell you that that has been a great pipeline for us. Without that, we would have even bigger challenges. So I think we're authorized 28 patrol aids, and at most times we are close to having all of those filled. And one of the things we've actually mentioned it is myself and the sheriff have a meeting with Dr. Robertson tomorrow or Thursday about restarting the Public Safety Academy within VBCPS, that certain schools, juniors and seniors will have a certain track for public safety so that we can even start that career pipeline earlier. You know, the sheriff can hire them at 18. So if they go into that pipeline, junior or senior, then he can matriculate them. We can either take them as a patrol aide at 18. He can hire them as a deputy at 18, but it's a win-win for both of your public safety agencies within the beach.
Okay, Cash.
I mean, could you start the pilot program in the District 7 precinct that is Captain Gervin's? I mean, could you start it there?
I will mention that to the superintendent tomorrow that and ask him to evaluate his staff and see if that's an option.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. And count me on board with the mounted police. I've seen them break up massive crowds in very, trying situations, but it also show a lot of love to kids and elderly and everything. I think it's really a good thing.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks a bunch, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, the next presentation will be a quick one by our planning department staff. They're going to give us a glimpse of the items that are coming before you on your February 17th city council meeting.
All righty.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. I'm here this afternoon to run through the planning items on your February 17th agenda. There are a total of 8 items on the agenda, all of which are located within the northern portion of the city. Item 1 is a street closure request for a portion of Arctic Avenue adjacent to 300 Winston-Salem, located in District 5 and adjacent to Big Sam's Restaurant. This request is related to the western half of the right-of-way, which equates to about 3,750 square feet, which, if closed, would be incorporated into the property at 300 Winston-Salem. The eastern half of the right-of-way in this area was closed in 1976 and incorporated into 200 Winston-Salem to the east. A viewers' meeting was held on December 3rd, during which it was determined that closure of this area would not pose a public inconvenience. However, it was determined that a public drainage easement would be needed over the entire closure area due to an existing stormwater pipe that extends through this portion of Arctic Avenue. Additionally, if the Winston-Salem CIP is not complete prior to the final street closure approval, staff is recommending a temporary construction easement, again, over the entire closed area to allow for the completion of that project. Staff is unaware of any opposition to the request, and the item received unanimous support from the Planning Commission. Item 2 is a modification of conditions request for property located at 514 9th Street in District 5. This is a change in nonconformity that was approved for the site in 2024, which allowed for the construction of a rear addition to the existing dwelling. During construction of that addition, an exterior staircase and deck was added, but that was not shown on that 2024 conditioned plan. As such, the subject modification is required. With this request, the applicant is also seeking approval to construct a wood ramp in the future, if needed, which would replace the existing exterior staircase. Staff has received 4 letters of support for this request, and the item was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission at their January hearing. Item 3 is another modification of conditions request, this one for property located at 1500 Pacific Avenue, again in District 5. The applicant is requesting to modify the conditions associated with a 2001 conditional use permit for a commercial parking lot and church parking lot, which conditioned the use of landscaping rather than fencing along the perimeter of the site. The applicant is seeking approval to install a 6-foot-tall fence around the perimeter in addition to the existing landscaping. Since the Oceanfront Resort District Form-Based Code limits the height of fencing to 4 feet when you're within 5 feet of the right-of-way, the applicant is requesting a deviation to allow this 6-foot option. And the proposed fencing would be in the same general location as the existing 4-foot fence that's out there now. While this site is used for both a commercial parking lot and an outdoor play area for the adjacent Star of the Sea Catholic School, the commercial parking lot does not operate during school hours. The 6-foot height was recommended by the police department after a security incident during which an individual climbed over the fence and entered the premises. Staff finds the proposed black aluminum fence to be an improvement from the existing chain link fence, and the proposal receives support from the Resort Advisory Commission's Planning Design Review Committee. We are unaware of any opposition to the request, and the Planning Commission recommended approval on consent. Item 4 is a conditional rezoning request for 901 First Colonial Road in District 6. The applicant is requesting to conditionally rezone the site from O2 Office District to conditional B2 Community Business District in order to operate a retail store within the existing building. The site was used as a chiropractor's office until 2025, after which it was leased for retail use as a balloon shop. When the business owner applied for a business license, they were told that the property would need to be rezoned to allow for the retail use. Since the site lies within the greater than 75 decibel noise zone, the proffers have restricted any use of the property to those that are permitted within the B2 district, as well as those that are compatible within the greater than 75 decibel noise zone. The applicant intends to use the building and the site as is. We have not received any opposition, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by consent. Item 5 is a conditional use permit request for 941 Laskin Road in District 6. The specific request is for an indoor recreational facility utilizing the existing vacant movie theater. The site is zoned B2 and lies within the 70 to 75 decibel noise zone, accident potential zone 2, and the resort area SGA. The applicant intends to repurpose the existing theater and add an approximately 12,000 square foot addition at the front of the building. The facility will include 7 paddleball courts and 1 pickleball court, all of which will be located indoors. As you can see in the bottom left of the plan on the slide there, they are proposing an 8,000 square foot restaurant. However, that is a by right use in the B2 district. According to the parking requirements in the zoning ordinance, a total of 247 spaces are required to support both the recreational facility and the proposed restaurant. However, the applicant intends to reuse the site as is, and there are only 176 spaces provided. As such, a parking study was submitted by the applicant and ultimately approved by the zoning administrator to reduce the parking required for an indoor recreational facility from 1 space per 200 square feet of floor area to 5 spaces per court. It would be a public.
Any other questions?
The rendering on the slide here illustrates the proposed exterior changes to the theater. I will note that the mural that is seen there will be subject to the review and approval of the planning director once a final design is known. A letter of support was received from RAC's Planning Design Review Committee. We have not received any opposition, and again, this item went through on consent. Item 6 is another CUP request. This is for a bulk storage yard at 1361 Virginia Beach Boulevard in District 6. The applicant intends to use the site to store towed vehicles and will utilize the existing building as an office for the tow business. While towing operations will occur 24/7, office hours will be limited to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. All existing structures located at the rear of the site, which you can see in the image on the right there, will be removed with this request, as will the existing non-conforming sign, which is seen in the image on the left. The proposed bulk storage yard use is considered compatible in both the greater than 75 decibel noise zone as well as the accident potential zone 1. While the applicant is requesting a deviation to the screening requirements for a bulk storage yard, requesting approval just to do perimeter fencing versus the landscaping, they are proposing additional landscaping along the front of the building facade as well as along the edge of the parking area there. We have received 4 letters of support, including one from the residential property owner to the south of this site. We have not received any opposition, and Planning Commission recommended approval by 10-0 vote with 1 abstention. Item 7 is another CUP request. This is for an assembly use at 5193 Shore Drive, Suite 108. This is within the Lake Shores Shopping Center. The applicant intends to operate an event venue for up to 90 guests within an existing 240 square foot suite. Proposed hours of operation are Monday through Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then Thursday through Sunday from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. A new building-mounted sign and window decals are proposed with the request, and adequate parking is available within the overall shopping center to support the use. We did receive 2 letters of opposition noting concerns related to a decrease in property values as well as an increase in noise and traffic. We did also receive a petition of support with 5 signatures from tenants within the shopping center. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval. The final item for consideration is an alternative compliance request for 4616 Virginia Beach Boulevard in District 4. This is the existing Bank of America site. They are seeking to replace the existing monument sign that's located in the southwest corner of the site. According to the Central Business Core District, or CBC, form-based code, any freestanding sign does require City Council approval through this alternative compliance process. The current site doesn't meet the CBC's form-based code requirements, which recommends pulling buildings up to the street. If you have a building right up to the street, you don't really have the same need for a freestanding sign. However, existing site, existing building, it's about 60 feet from the right-of-way, making the freestanding sign more necessary. The top image there shows the existing sign, and then the bottom image shows the sign that they're proposing. The new sign is about 18 square feet smaller than the existing sign. This was reviewed by the Central Business District Association's Design Review Committee and received support from that group, and we haven't received any opposition, and again, unanimous support from the Planning Commission. And that concludes my briefing.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
To us.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Yes, we expect the Planning Commission to consider the comprehensive plan in March and then come to City Council in April.
What about the ITA plan update? Is that underway at this point?
Yes, it is. So that's a separate process, and we are working with a consultant. We expect public engagement to start on that in March. Yes.
I didn't even know that we had hired the consultant until I heard it through the grapevine. And I think the public needs to be involved at the very beginning, and I've been saying that from the beginning. I'll just say it again. March is too late.
Okay, anybody else at this point? Okay, thank you. Okay, is that it? Moving on. Okay, council comments. Anybody? Stacy, Michael, Amelia.
Just real quick, Mr. Mayor. On Bay Island, we've had incidents over the last several months. We had a sewer pump station that busted and spewed waste over the neighborhood. And then we had a sinkhole that, in the middle of the one road that leads in and out of Bay Island. And the city came, put a steel plate as a temporary measure. In the meantime, a second sinkhole started in the area. And I just want to commend the city staff, the public utilities, for their hard work, especially in this weather, to get out there and to address the situation. And then on top of that, the Civic League called for an emergency meeting in order to let the people know what was going on. There was a lot of concern in the neighborhood. And this, I'd like to thank the city manager who sent his representative, R.J. Matz, who is a godsend for all of us here, along with the people from public utilities, Don Perrin, Robert Wheeler, Michael Vera. They came to the Civic League meeting last night, did a tremendous job of answering questions. And the people that live on the island had some really detailed, good questions, but they put everything to rest. And I liken it to being on an airplane, sitting on the tarmac, and you're sitting there for an hour and you have no idea why you're sitting there. And then the pilot gets on the intercom and says, there was a delay in Chicago, which causes us not to be able to take off. And all of a sudden now you go, at least I know what's going on. So that's what happened last night. And again, I just want to commend the people at Public Utilities, R.J. Matz, fantastic job. They came out in force and did just put the whole community at ease. So again, I want to thank the city manager and all the folks involved.
I'm not sure what the order is, but I'm happy to.
Michael, and then Amelia.
Mine's quick, Mayor. I just wanted to say a quick word on behalf of our Cultural Affairs Department that on Thursday at 11 a.m. here at City Hall, there'll be a dedication of an acknowledgement of the contributions of American Indian folks throughout history within the city of Virginia Beach. This process was facilitated by Cultural Affairs, but led by Indian leadership from across Virginia Beach and the region. To my knowledge, it's the first time any such acknowledgement has been made in a formal and lasting way here at City Hall. And I want to commend first those who were involved in formulating it, and also our Cultural Affairs Department, who really led and facilitated that effort in partnership with Native leadership in Virginia Beach. That's going to happen. It's going to be a very special experience on Thursday morning. So I hope you all can make it, and I hope those who are
Thursday at 11.
watching in the public can be there as well to participate, to celebrate, and to acknowledge the people who lived on this land that we do for thousands of years before us.
Michael, thank you for that.
Yep.
Amelia.
I just wanted to mention three things. On this Sunday, as you know, it's been, over 2 years, going to the third, that we've done the historic signage for the different African-American historic neighborhoods. And this time, it will be CTAC. And of course, we have Councilman Remick will be there, and the mayor, and we hope several of you will come out, because CTAC neighborhood are very excited about that. So
What time and where?
it's 1:30. And then afterwards, we'll go to Michael's favorite place for the reception, Lita.
I thought you were going to say Pongo Boys Barbecue. Oh, Mount Trask.
We had them all.
We'll wait for the dedication of your new leader.
Yes, yes, that will be exciting.
Yes.
Okay, and then the second thing is, I already mentioned to you where I went up to Richmond on Monday, and we've discussed to do with the study that we're pushing instead of the light rail. And the third, I will be going back up to Richmond on Wednesday and Thursday because I'm on the executive board for the Virginia Municipal League. So I will share what happens then when I return. I'll try and rest my legs tonight.
There you go.
Yes.
Worth.
Thank you, Mayor, and just address your colleagues. Last Friday in our package, we had a CCSR about Route 33 and HRT, and there was a meeting in January of HRT, the Resort Advisory Commission, especially the Hotel Association, because this Route 33 does provide transportation for employees that work at the oceanfront at hotels, especially going up to the Wyndham on 67th Street, ARAs on 67th Street as well. So for $45,000 more, we can add back Route 33 to the transportation plan, and I seek you all's support for that. For $45,000, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Patrick?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if council wants us to add that back, we can add it back. We'll have to do it by February 13th. February 13th to notify them. So if council desires that, we could bring that forward for consideration.
Well, at least bring it forward and we'll consider it. And, we'll see what happens. Yeah, but at least we should hear.
Got it. So, Mr. Mayor, February 13th? Yes. Right, so really, if council, and is the funding, is there a reserve for it or something? Come forward. There isn't a voting meeting for that, so if council wants us to do that, there's capacity inside the fund to cover it though, right?
Yes, we would just ask for HRT to include it in the calculation for the transportation services plan for next year.
Okay? Okay, we'll go ahead.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Barbara, do you have something?
Yes, as liaison reports, as a liaison to the IGA committee, which I think meets this week, since there is a consultant that's hired to work on that plan, I very much would like to know what their scope of work is and their timeline, and when they do expect to go out to the public. I know when we did the current ITA plan, the public was a part of it, and I was from the very beginning. So we're coming in a bit late on this, but there couldn't be a more important area than the ITA as far as what's going to happen to this city in the next few months and certainly few years. It's the future. And this is extremely important that we have the public involved in this. So I do hope to know something about what this consultant is directed to do and what their plans are.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Dehaney, I had some inquiries. Once again, we had the holiday lights, which was a very proud and long tradition here. And circumstances, put a little hitch in the situation. It was possible to get a little update and talk maybe what the situation is and what the plans may be going forward.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask Amanda Jarrett to come and give City Council a quick overview of the issues and what next steps looks like as it relates to the valuable and very important Holiday Lights program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As the manager said, we absolutely value our holiday lights programming. We're actively working with beach events to reinvent our holiday lights and to enhance our holiday celebrations across the board while also protecting our invaluable seawall. We look forward to unveiling the new holiday schedule and programming in the coming months. So we're absolutely focused on broadening our holiday celebrations at the oceanfront and working with beach events to have a new and reinvented programming. As has been mentioned, the boardwalk, which serves as a seawall, has become stressed over time with the volume of vehicles that travel participating in the Holiday Lights programming. And so that's an incredible asset to our resort area and a key part of our flood protection and coastal resiliency efforts. And so while we value the program as it has been, we look forward to a reinvented celebration of the holidays in Virginia Beach.
Okay, Worth and then Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Jarrett, for the update. A constituent called last week and asked if there was any engineer's report or study about the boardwalk and the stress on it, and thank you, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Public Works Director LJ Hanson can come and speak to that as well.
Hey, LJ.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Councilman, there are a number of reports that are done that are small in scope. So there's nothing that's comprehensive necessarily. We do have one that went through and identified what the different thicknesses of the concrete are over the course. There's not a particular study that was done for this exact purpose. In other words, what it means for having vehicles drive on there. We do have studies, though, that have talked about the condition of the overall boardwalk and some of the issues that we are having with it, and discuss our need for maintenance. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. But yeah, once again, a lot of people really value this, and that and the Christmas parade is part of a very proud tradition that Virginia Beach has had. Okay, anybody else for comments? And we'll just go ahead and Ms. Henley, if we can do that.
Right, looking at the agenda, we have 7 items. Are there any items that anyone would like more information about or want to have pulled?
There are no speakers on any of these.
All right, then it looks like they will all be on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley. There we go. That's the way to do it.
Good job.
All right. The chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to the exemptions of the open meetings allowed by section 2.23711A Code of Virginia as amended for the following purposes. 1, legal matters, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by public body regarding specific legal matters requiring provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to section 2.23711A8 Atlantic Park, and legal matters, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in an open matter would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture in the public body pursuant to section 2.23711A7 Atlantic Park. And then publicly held property, discussions or considerations of real property for public purpose or the disposition of publicly held property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.23711A3, and that would be District 6. And then personal matters, discussion, considerations, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointments, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the public body pursuant to section 2.23711A1. And that's council, boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay.
Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Cummings?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley? Aye. Councilmember Hutchinson? Councilmember Jackson Green?
Aye.
Councilmember Remick? Councilmember Ross Hammond?
Aye.
And Councilmember Shulman?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 8-0, you've approved to go to closed session.
Okay, we are recessed into close and focus. I call this meeting to order, and if you will please stand if you are able and willing for the invocation. Heavenly Father, you are always with us and beside us. Be with us evening and as we consider the affairs of our great city. Give us the patience to listen, the wisdom to decide, and the strength to act. Amen. And if we could have, please, a moment of silence for all those who have paid the ultimate price to keep our city and nation safe. And Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all. Madam Clerk, do we have a roll call?
All present, Mayor, with the exception of Vice Mayor Wilson and Councilmember Rouse.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion for the certification of the closed session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, open the vote. There we go.
Sorry, by a vote of 9-0, you certified the closed session in accordance with the motion to recess.
Okay, can we have a vote for the approval of the minutes of the informal and formal sessions of January 20th, 2026?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, I have to abstain since I was absent that day.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's open the vote. Okay, great.
By a vote of 8-0, you've approved the minutes as presented, with the exception of Councilmember Shulman, who abstained.
All right, thank you. Now move on to a public hearing for the acquisition by agreement or condemnation of the Limbrook Landing Sidewalk Improvements Project, CIP 100423112. Any speakers?
Mayor, we don't have any speakers.
Okay. At this point, I can ask Mrs. Henley if she would do the consent agenda.
Items to be on the consent agenda. Number 1, an ordinance to grant a franchise to the Virginia Beach Fishing Pier LLC for the use of city property at the oceanfront and 15th Street regarding the operation of the Virginia Beach Fishing Pier. Second, an ordinance to dissolve the Health Services Advisory Board, which was requested by the City Council as action. Item 3, resolution to approve the Attainable Workforce Housing Performance Grant to Concord Apartments LP and authorize the city manager to execute the grant agreement and support agreement. Item 4, a resolution to request the Virginia Department of Transportation, VDOT, accept additional streets regarding the urban maintenance payments. Item 5, a resolution to request the Virginia Department of Transportation, VDOT, accept corrections and deletions to road inventory regarding the urban maintenance payments. Item 6, an ordinance to authorize temporary encroachments into city-owned property known as Lake Joyce at the rear of 4417 Lee Avenue regarding and remove an existing gazebo, construct and maintain a new gazebo, walkway, pier, and maintain an existing concrete platform and an existing brick shed, and this is in District 9. Item 7, an ordinance to accept and appropriate $961,962 from the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services, DBHDS, to the fiscal year 2025-26 Human Services Operating Budget, support the jail-based restoration pilot program, and authorize within the fiscal year 2025-2026 operating budgets 2.5 full-time employees, Ray Human Services, and 2 full-time employees, Ray the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office. I move approval of the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Let's open the vote.
By a vote of 9-0, you have approved the consent agenda as read by Councilmember Henley.
Okay, thank you. Now we have just a couple of appointments. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I would move appointing to the Audit Committee, Robert Borman, and to the Bayfront Advisory Commission, reappoint William Hurst.
Okay, any discussion? Let's open the vote.
By a vote of 9-0, you've appointed those read by Councilmember Henley.
Okay, very good. At this point, is there any old business? Any new business? Okay, we are adjourned to open mic.